Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us for another episode of LGOtv Big Talk. And why Big Talk? Because I hate small talk. So my promise to you is that I'm going to bring you the most interesting guests and have the most interesting conversations about the most interesting topics. And today's guest is no exception. He is one of the most interesting individuals I have met in the last year. He is Alan Mulally, who has served as president and CEO of the Ford Motor Company and a member of the Ford's board of directors from September 2006 to June of 2014. Now, he is widely credited for saving this company, an American institution. But before that, he did the same thing at Boeing. He is a space nerd, an engineer. He is somebody who, as somebody who has a son who's interested in flying in space, had my heart from the get. He also, as you know, if you've talked to me, is a firm believer in family meeting. He is on the board of Google. He's on the board of Carbon 3D. He's on the board of the Mayo Clinic. He is one of the top CEOs in the world, one of the most influential individuals in the world. But more than just that, he is someone who believes in service in his soul. It is what has made him who he is, and he is here today to talk to us about how he got to that place. So, Alan, thank you for joining us today.
Well, Laura, thanks a lot. And you can just keep talking as much as you want. I mean, I've never felt so good.
So I want to jump in and I want to just talk about the thing that every time your name, Alan Mulally, and working together are synonymous. It is a thing that everybody talks about, that they credit for being the reason why you were able to actually bring these companies back from, certain death. So let's spend a little time talking about working together just to set a stage about your management philosophy, your service mindset, and how you approach really work and life and everything together.
Oh, well, absolutely. And I think that you received a copy of a slide that
Yes.
Oh, good. Oh, great. You
Here
can
it is.
show. Yeah, this is great. So, to answer your question, I think this is a great place to start. And everything I really believe in and understand is shown on this chart. And I had the honor to serve, as you mentioned, at the Boeing company, and I also had a chance to serve on the design and the manufacture and the support of all the commercial airplanes initially. And then also they asked me to take the lead on integrating McDonnell Douglas and Rockwell, all the defense and space assets, when we bought them to create the largest aerospace company. And so through all those airplane programs, they're complicated, they're sophisticated. We all know how fantastic commercial airplanes are that fly safely and efficiently halfway around the world. And so each one of those airplane programs, the 707, the 727, the 737, I love to say their names, the 747, the 757, the 767, the 777, and the 787, are all phenomenal products that have a compelling vision for what they are going to deliver for the people of our world. And they also include hundreds of thousands of people when you design a new airplane around the world. And all the stakeholders are included, the traveling public, the airlines themselves, our employees, the suppliers, the bankers, the investors. And so everyone is an entrepreneurial absolutely creation, because this airplane has 4 million parts, the quality, the fuel efficiency, the safety, very sophisticated. So you can imagine that growing up in this environment and being on all these programs, that working together is really, really important, because we actually commit these airplane programs 5 years in advance. They're going to meet all the requirements. The airlines actually have all the seats sold and their routes all established. And so it's an unbelievable invention, but it's also done on a schedule. So people working together, talented people working together, is the essence of everything. And here's what I've learned about that, to your question, and just a couple of comments about this slide. So these are the principles and practices that I have learned and nurtured over the years at Boeing, and then also what I took to Ford, because this is what I know. So the first one, people first, that's code for love them up. These are talented people around the world, and they're committing their life to creating this cathedral. And so appreciating them and including them and having them be the center of everything that we do is most important. Including everybody, like we talked about, all the stakeholders. Every airplane has a vision. Is it going to be long range, short range, and what they're going to do for takeoff performance and the fields it's going to go. And so everyone has a compelling vision for its service. And then, of course, having a comprehensive strategy, not only the technical strategy, but also the working together strategy and the partnership strategy, all have to be very clear and comprehensive. And then, of course, the relentless implementation plan that everybody loves to focus on, and that's the business plan review, where once a week we have all the stakeholders networked around the world to review the plan, the status against the plan, and the areas need special attention. Clear performance goals, having one plan. Most companies have lots of plans. Everybody's trying to figure out what the plan is. Using facts and data. We love what everybody thinks and their opinions, but we really love for them to share the facts and data that they're looking at so that we all can understand the conclusions that we're all drawing together. Over on the right-hand side, you can see that it really is including everybody, and everybody knows the plan and the status and what the areas need special attention. We actually color code them, Laura. So green, it's on plan. Yellow, we have an issue but we have a solution. And red means we have a new issue and we don't have a solution yet. And so the whole idea is that the things that come up, the challenges, the areas need special attention, are really gems. And we love to know what the status is, because there's no way that we can work together to get back on plan and deliver the plan unless we share everything, the financial situation, the technical situation, the partnership, the suppliers, everything. And then you can see the behaviors. You'd never be able to get things like this done if we all don't have a positive, find a way attitude, that we respect each other, we listen to each other, help each other. And also emotional resilience is really important. It's like a Henry Ford quote where he said, if you think you can or you think you can't, you're probably right. And so trust in this process of working together. Go right back up to the top, make sure you got everybody included. We really are being transparent what the issues are, and then work together to turn the reds, the yellows, greens. And then the have fun, Laura. I mean, every day I wake up and I'm just so thankful that I had a chance to serve on the design of each of these airplanes and help get people together around our world so we could find out we had more in common than we're different, and we could choose to work together for the good of all of us. And so enjoying the journey and each other is just really an important part of working together. Now, a corollary to that is never a joke or never humor at anybody's expense. And the reason that's so important on working together is that it's never funny. And if people feel like they're going to be a victim, then they're going to be very hesitant to share what the real situation is. And so you're going to go at the heart of working together, which is that everybody knows the plan. They feel comfortable sharing the plan. It's okay to have an issue, because we're going to expect the unexpected and we're going to expect to deal with it. And you can see the PGA it doesn't stand for Professional Golf Association. It stands for profitable growth for all, meaning that if you're in business, then the goal is to make products and services that people want and they value with ever increasing efficiency. So revenue times margins. And so, but it's for the good of all the stakeholders. Everybody has to benefit. All the stakeholders have to benefit, not just the shareholders. And if you're profitably growing, everybody's going to be so pleased and happy because you're creating value for everybody. And if you're not profitably growing, then you're going out of business. Just since I see my airplane up there, just a comment about the airplane. That's my airplane.
Yeah, I had to ask you that because you're in some pretty cutthroat businesses doing some pretty tough things, and you sign everything with a doodle of an airplane.
I do, and I as an airplane designer, I love drawing my airplane and then writing the equations of motion on it, and enjoy my technical background. And so one time I was in Guangzhou, China, and we were completing a deal for, I think, 20 777 airplanes, huge amount of money, and so the contracts people were finishing negotiations, and I wasn't needed. I was representing the airplane technically at that time, and as the leader of the program, so I drew my airplane. I started to write my equations of motion, and the chairman of China Southern Airlines was sitting on the side of the table, and he stopped the meeting. He said, "Ah, Mr. Mulally, that's your sign. That's your chop. That's your bean." I'm going, "Well, yeah, I mean, that's true. That's who I am." And I said, "What do you think?" He said, "Well, I would like you to sign this $20 billion contract with that airplane." And I turned around to the contracts and the lawyers. I said, "What do you guys think?" And I said, "You can't sign a $20 billion contract with a doodle of an airplane." So I said to the chairman, "Well, what do you think?" And he said, I'm only going to sign this. This is the most important purchase we'll ever make. It's the most important thing to the airline, our future. And you're the designer, and I would like your signature on the contract." So I turned around to the contract people, and I said, and he said, I will not even sign it if you don't draw your airplane. So I turned around to the contracts people again. And I said, "What do you think?" He said, "Mr. Mulally, we really like your airplane." And so ever since then, I've always signed the contracts with my doodle, as you say.
It's fantastic, and there are so many things about you that are disarming, and I know that you've used that strategically, right? I read in the book American Icon that talks about your coming into Ford and working with the team to save the company. And I say with the team because I know every single time anyone gives you credit, you talk about how great your team was that you have around you. But it talks about your goofy grin and your, charm and your Midwest aw shucks that, you walk in on day one wearing a blazer and khakis to this pinstripe,
Oh,
organization where, it's cutthroat and there's a cancer of culture. And, the first thing on your slide is love them up. So you walk in ready to love them up in a culture where people have, I mean, you might as well have walked in speaking Martian to the people that have been working there. Where did this come from? I know it started at Boeing. It probably started long before that. Are there times in your childhood, are there parents, are there teachers, are there nurses or mentors or coaches, or are there moments that you can point to where the seeds of what we see on this slide, you're working together principles really started to take root?
well, that's a great question, Laura. I just a fun story that's probably appropriate. Well, it is appropriate that you mentioned is that when I first arrived, I Bill Ford walked me out onto the stage, and I had all the journalists from around the world. And I didn't know it at the time, but I was the first CEO hired in the automobile industry that did not grow up in the industry. And so everybody was wondering, who in the world is this person? And Ford and GM and Chrysler at the time, as you know, were in a lot of trouble, and the economy was slowing down. And so so he walks me on the stage, and then he goes and sits down. And so I'm having an impromptu press conference now with these hundreds of journalists,
You're like,
so, all around the world. So I started asking their questions, and I just got there. And so I answered them as best I could and told them why I came and what I kind of generally where we're going to go. And I also asked them for their help and understanding and to help make sure everybody knew what was going on. And so they got kind of comfortable with me, and that they asked me two questions that I'll always remember. One was, "So, Miss Mulally, with all due respect, you don't know anything about the automobile business, and it's really, really complicated, starting with the products themselves. And we're in trouble. And what does it mean to us that you're here and you don't know anything?" And I said, "Well, I agree with you that the automobile industry is very sophisticated, and starting with the products. And matter of fact, an average car or truck has around 10,000 parts. And you think about the quality and the fuel efficiency and the safety, systems engineering, phenomenal products. I might point out that the 777 airplane has 4 million parts, and it stays in the air." Next day, 3-inch headlines, Laura, the Detroit News. "I think we got the right guy." Now, to your point, the other question they said was, one of the journalists said, well, with all due respect, Ms. Mulally, we've noticed that the color of your slacks are a different color than your coat. And I said, yes, that's true. Do you have a question, being a customer in person? They said, well, you probably don't know this, but the automobile industry is very buttoned up. I mean, very sophisticated. And the leaders, all of their slacks match the color of their coat. Matter of fact, they have very starched shirts and very sophisticated cufflinks. And they even have handkerchiefs that match their tie.
Yeah, but you have a plain doodle.
Exactly. It gets worse. And so I said, well, that's true. And they said, well, is it going to be okay in the world headquarters of the Ford Motor Company, one of the largest corporations in the world, for the executives to wear sport coat and slacks in the world headquarters tomorrow morning? And I rubbed my chin very thoughtfully and I said decisively, yes. And the next day, 3-inch headlines, culture change has already begun at Ford. So the answer to your question is, I grew up with pretty humble background. Humble and not a lot of resources at all, but I had a lot of love from my parents, and I was really brainwashed. So every day my mother would say things to me like this, Laura, like, now remember, honey, what the purpose of life is. And I'd say, oh yes, Mom, I know, to love and be loved. And then she'd say, now remember, in that order. Okay, right, thanks, Mom. Then the next day she'd say, well, to serve is to live. Yes, Mom, thank you very much. Next day, remember, seek to understand before you seek to be understood. Yes, thank you, Mom, for that. Then the next day my dad would say, now, remember to expect the unexpected and expect to deal with it. And then my mom would say another day, working together with people and developing those skills, you can create a lot of good for the greater good. And so that, combined with a fabulous minister that we had in the church, and all I wanted to do was get a pair of Levi's and some Ouija shoes and fit in, and so the only way I knew to do that was to work. And so I started all my little businesses, my TV guide route, my lawn mowing, working at the grocery store, a bagger, a checker. And the more that I respected everybody and treated them with dignity, and which I believed in them, and helped them out by, wrapping their groceries when it was snowing, and then they pay me for it. I'm the only person I know of that, as a checker at the Dillon's grocery store, when the people went through, they actually gave me a tip, Laura, because I was taking care of them, and I appreciated them, and so I thought about this a lot. The answer to your question is, I think that over time, I not only loved serving, but it was benefited everybody that I was doing it with, and so I was a cowboy, and I was a rancher and a farmer, and I worked in construction, and had to work my way and pay through college and stuff. And then I found my first dream. As you said, my first dream was to be an astronaut, but then I found out early in the program that I had a color blindness, so I couldn't do that. So I found my second love with some professors that said, Alan, you love working together, you love with talented people, you love technology. And so they took me to Boeing, introduced me to Boeing, all these phenomenal, smart engineers that are doing all these work. And so all of that led me to want to serve. And then I found my love in serving and making these great airplanes and working with all these talented people.
There's such a charm to you, this sort of like, I can't believe people are paying me to do my dream, that I feel like is the thread throughout your career. And I love the fact that it starts with you bagging groceries in the snow and serving other people and working together and doing all the things that you were told as a child were the way to be humane, the way to respect other people and give people dignity in a world and have dignity for yourself. And also you're like, and they paid me for it. Like, I just think there's this lovely
Laura, one thing you said is just powerful, and that's the dignity word.
Mhm.
I mean, it's just incredible, because the power of recognizing each of us and all of us as fellow human beings on this travel, and being able to share with them who you are, and where are we going, and as we have talked in the past, do the leaders see me, and are they including me? And so, and I don't know how we would ever uh, design these fabulous airplanes, or the Boeing company business, or responded to 9/11 terrorist attacks, which uh, most companies would never be able to survive that kind of a reduction in their throughput. Just a horrible disaster. And then the Ford Motor Company, without this inclusion and without this respect, and people actually feeling that pride of meaningful accomplishment of doing things for other people. So I think your dignity word is really, really powerful.
So I want to talk a little bit about when you got to Ford, and I'm sure there are stories from the Boeing time that sort of helped carve this part of who you are. There are a couple of stories there that I've heard. There's sort of the storied tales of Alan Mulally and coming to Ford and the change that was made. And one of them has to do with the weekly meetings that you had, where you said enough about like having all day filled with crazy meetings and everyone's in silos. I'm
Oh,
bringing
the
all
business
the
plan
decision
review,
makers
yes.
together. Yes, yes, this is the business plan review. That was every Thursday, and uh, people would come in and they would show you all the green, everything was perfect, and you're like, the company's losing billions of dollars, there's no possible way. You had to get them to trust you that it would be okay. That's one story. And then the other story is the story about not making jokes at other people's expense, and how you showed that you were really serious about that. And I think
Wow.
both of those
Yeah,
things are the embodiment of how, we talk about love as work made visible. We can talk a little bit about that as well, but there's a sort of this lifelong commitment, and I think both of those stories are are pretty emblematic of how you've lived this, even at
yeah,
times where it was going to be really
absolutely.
uncomfortable for all involved, but you knew you could get everyone through it.
Absolutely. And um, it's such a serious, these are two really, really serious questions, and important for all of us. On the first one, when I arrived at Ford, all I had was my piece of paper, Laura. That's all I had, was my one little piece of paper.
And your
And of
doodle.
course, my deal, and they all, which was another issue, because the engineers at Ford worked for 8 years to try to help me be able to draw a car really fast, but always had bumpers on it. And so finally, they decided that they would love up my airplane, because it either was a commercial airplane or it was a flying car. So
Yes.
that's how they rationalized that. So I had my piece of paper, and of course they didn't know me and I didn't know them, and I knew it was going to be all about us working together. So I shared with them, these are the principles and practices, and we're going to follow them. And so they wanted to know all about them. And days, I mean, they asked me question after question about what do those mean? What does it mean to respect each other and help each other and appreciate each other? And you notice they're not really fancy words, but they're all things you can see. So it's a process, like you said, the vision, the strategy, the plan, the business plan review, and it's also the behaviors. And it's a commitment that we're all going to make, that we're going to follow those. And I also said we're going to have zero tolerance for people that violate it, because you'd be choosing to move on, because this is what we need to do to save Ford and take it flying again. And um, so I shared with them the weekly business plan review, that every one of them was going to present, everyone was going to color code their work, and here's the behaviors. We're going to listen to each other, help each other, no expense, any humor at anybody else's expense. And so the meetings, the first business plan review, I think, Laura, took 3 days, and everybody just wanted to talk. Just wanted to say that, because there's a lot of talk about when you're losing $17 billion. That was the first forecast I saw for profits for the year, and we achieved it. So, I mean, it wasn't a forecast accuracy issue. We were really in trouble. And so it's starting to go pretty well. But to your point, we had 300 charts, and they're all green. They're all color coded green by the people that are doing the work. So I stopped the meeting, and I said, you know now, and you didn't know before, and I know we're going to lose $17 billion. Is there anything that's not going well? Or is there anything that's not going well? And eye contact down to the floor, and no one wanted to be the first one to show a red because people disappeared, and they told me that. I mean, the philosophy in most companies still is you only bring an issue to your supervisor if you have a solution. So now the whole place is managing a secret. They don't know what's going on, so everybody can't help. So that went on and on. And to your point, I was getting a little nervous because if I didn't make a breakthrough with this team where they trusted the process and they trusted me, we weren't going to be able to work the reds to yellows to greens and save our wonderful Ford.
Yes.
So finally, one of the leaders, they had a problem with the launch of the new Edge in Oakville, Canada, and they had a lift actuator issue. So they stopped production, which they should, because we said we're only delivering the finest quality. And that's a big deal. And so in the meeting ahead of our business plan review, he had a meeting with his team, and he said, I think this is one of those red things Alan's talking about. And everybody said, well, you can turn it red, but nice to know you. You've had a great career. So he walks in the next day, and here's up come green, 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 green. Up comes this red chart. And he
Were you
said,
so excited to see the red?
no kidding. I was so excited. So, and I started to clap, and everybody around the table, everybody that was connected on the internet, all knew that was a sign. The doors in the back of the Thunderbird room are going to open up. 2 large human beings were going to come in. They were going to extract Mark from the meeting because he had a red. And the doors didn't open up. And I said, Mark, that is great visibility. And I turned around at the team and said, what are your initial thoughts on how we can help? Well, 3 people offered thoughts about, well, they've seen that on such and such. They'll get the data. And that took 8 or 9 seconds. And we went on to the next green, green, green. The next week, Laura, there's only 1 green again, but Mark is still there. They can't believe he's still there. And so I even moved him over closer to me for the following meeting, so to make a point that this is great. This is great behavior. And so a few weeks later,
loving him up. You were loving him up.
Oh man, do you ever get it? So a few weeks later, they had a solution, turned to yellow. A couple of weeks later, they exchanged the parts out, and they started flowing around the world. And you know what it looked like the following week. All 300 charts looked like a rainbow. There are lots of greens in addition to the reds and yellows, because in every organization, there's so many things that are going well, but you're celebrating what's going well with celebrating all the things that have an issue, and you're getting a chance to work those. So that's the first part. Now, the second part that you asked is, so what happens in this working together when you don't commit to the culture and you don't commit to the behaviors and the process? So,
and I think that this is particularly important now, just even in our country, where we're, living in this sort of cancel culture, very snarky. People want to take down other people with their keyboard warrior, on Twitter.
right.
So I think that we can take this question of how do you deal with a culture that needs to shift
Absolutely.
right now with what you did there.
Absolutely. And so just like we were talking about the dignity, that the most important thing about the behaviors of working together is that we're making a commitment to operate that way, the way we treat each other. And they're fundamentally right, as you and I know, Laura. I mean, we've been trying to practice them for thousands of years. I mean, it's the way you want to be treated and the way people should be treated, and we want to be treated. So I share with them that they're going to be zero tolerance, and we're going to help each other, and it's not going to be mean. We're going to do it in a positive way, but here are the behaviors. So I had one person, a really smart person on the team, functionally, and very smart, knew a lot about the business, but in every business plan review, he would go after another member of the team. Not just to show him how smart it was, but I mean, in his heart, he was really trying to, I'm sure, help, but he did it in such a horrible way and so aggressively that it would just shut down the organization, and people would stop working together because they didn't want to be a victim. They didn't want to be taken advantage of. So I followed him up to his office and a couple of times, and I said, so, here are the behaviors on the piece of paper there, and you're not following them, and I want to know why. And he said, well, it's just not me. I've been very effective over the years. I'm command and control. I know I'm intimidating, but I've been promoted and given more money, and and this is, I don't
Been
know
rewarded for it.
I
Yeah.
don't know whether I can change these and operate this way about treating each other. And I said, uh, you know, if you can't, it's okay. And his face lit up like a candle, Laura. Oh, it's okay. Meaning, I'm so smart and I'm so needed that it's okay to have these destructive behaviors. And I said, well, no, no. So he said, so I get an exception, right? I said, no, that's not quite it. It means that you're choosing by not committing to these behaviors, you're choosing to leave, and it's okay. I know, and it's okay for you. It's okay. It's going to be okay for all the participants, and because you know why we need to operate this way. He said, I know. I said, now here's the deal. I want you to think about it, and then come back and tell me tomorrow. Are you going to commit to these behaviors? And we can get you help, we'll get you a coach, whatever you need, because you're terrific. You're a wonderful human being. Still love you up. And the next day he came and he said, I don't think I can do it, Alan. I said, it's okay. And we wish you the very best. And we helped him move on. Another person, same behaviors, or not exact same behaviors, but behaviors were not consistent with respecting each other and believing in each other and helping each other. And had the same conversation with her. And she said, and I said, you know why we're committing to these behaviors? And she said, I know we need not only the smartest people in the world, but we also need their hearts. And you know, the data on employee satisfaction and engagement is all down
Hmm.
to 40%, which means that 70% of the people are coming to work are not coming to build a cathedral. And so she said, I know, and I really want to learn how to do that. And I said, well, but she said, I don't know whether I can do it or not. I said, well, why don't you think about it? Tell me tomorrow, and then we'll go from there. And it's okay if you if you don't want to commit to it. She went through the okay thing again. And so she came in the next day and said, you know, I really want to further develop myself and operate this way and treat people this way. Got her a little bit of help, didn't take much. And of course, everybody knows that she's committed to these behaviors, so they're all helping her too. And she turned out to be one of the most fantastic leaders that we've ever had. Now, you think about the way you asked that question. So here's the process, here are the behaviors. And so, how could we make this progress? Everybody wants to know that. How could you get this done in such a quick manner? Well, it means that you're going to hold yourself and the team accountable and responsible for following the process of working together and the behaviors. And what I have experienced, Laura, is that the vast majority of people, when they know the behaviors, they know the process, they're going to move that way. And when they move that way, they're going to feel what it's like to be in the light. They're going to feel like what it's like to be appreciated, be able to make a meaningful contribution and feel the satisfaction of contributing. So great questions. Thanks.
That has to take, though, an enormous amount of patience, right? The praising in public and the coaching in private is the slowest way to get to change, but also the most effective. So great, and yet you're also under enormous amounts of scrutiny from the press, from the board,
Right.
from the, the investors, from the labor unions, from your employees, from everyone, to even your family that you're going back and forth, from.
Yeah.
Where does the patience come from when you have you're like in a vat of boiling oil? Where does the patience come from to trust the process?
Well, I really think it's that I believed in it because I experienced it. And as you pointed out earlier, I've been doing this my whole life. It's the kind of the formation of me and the further development. It was always about lifelong learning and continuous improvement, and leading with humility, love, and service. And I uh, that's what I'd done, whether it was a small job, whether it was by myself, whether it was, like you said, by my family. We used to, I couldn't convince Nikki, Laura, and our 5 kids to call it a business plan review. So I adopted what you adopted with your family, and I called it a family meeting every week with very same process. And so I know it
Did
works.
you color code it also? You
Color
color code
coded,
the family meeting?
yeah.
Oh, we haven't gotten quite there yet.
They're
I've not
they're
been
in
able. Maybe I should call it the business plan review, and we could color code it.
Laura, they're in kindergarten, so they like the color coding too. In addition
Smart.
to, so so I've always operated that way, and I know it works. And it always works out because if you work together, even though the final objective might have to change or the plan might have to change, which does because you're expecting it to, because you're doing things that mean something to a lot of people, is that it's going to work out because you're going to work it as hard as you can. And if you have a problem that is going to take you in a different direction, it's still going to work out. So I know it works. But to your point, when all those charts were green and we're losing $17 billion, I was starting to get a little anxious about how long it would take to make this breakthrough. But that made me even more committed to being, not just doing, but being who we say we want to be by these principles and practices, and then doing it and living it. And it's hard. And I think the fact that I wouldn't give up on it and I wouldn't change my behavior, I could have switched into command and control and told everybody what to do, and I would have gotten back whatever I got. But it wouldn't be about everybody committing their hearts and their minds to this great transformation.
So it has to take this like almost religious, fanatical approach. You just believe so much, right? I mean, I like what do they say? Like that belief is this complete and total confidence in a thing that you can't actually see. And yet you're a guy who is driven by data. If you can't measure it, you can't change it. And so the where does is the faith? Do you think it comes from the roots of growing up in a family that was a religious family, or is it in the faith that you can put 4 million parts together and this bag, this steel tube of bolts actually will go off the ground? Like, where does the faith come from?
Okay, now I'm going to be right back. I've got to close the blinds because the lawnmower's just arrived. Hold on.
Okay.
Okay, sorry about that. So, I think well, I know it comes from the fact that that we are going to make it okay, because we'll make the changes we have to if we have an environment where people will all participate and they feel included and they can. And if it doesn't, if we really can't, if we run into an issue where we can't change it, we deal with it, and then we'll develop the better plan. So we'd always say at every meeting, here's the plan. That's the plan until it's not the plan. And if we have an issue that needs a change in the plan, we'll work it as hard as we can, use everybody's talent, and then together we'll work on the better plan. So you can see that it's just never over, and it's going to work out because we're going to work it out ourselves, and we don't have to worry about it. We're using everybody's talent. And so no matter what the situation has been, whether it was the terrorist attacks, the horrible terrorist attacks, or whether it was the situation that Ford was in, or the financial crisis when the largest corporation in the world, GM, couldn't get $1 in debtor possession and financing, and had to go through bankruptcy and Chrysler. But we knew that if we worked on a plan together that would deliver profitable growth by working on products and services people really want and value, and that's what we committed to, the best cars and trucks in the world, and we became the #1 brand in the United States. That if we did that and we worked on the efficiency and we did that together, that working together was going to work. That's good. I like that. I really think that working together always works.
Working together always works, but it's so hard when you have to come in as an outsider, convince people that you understand what they're doing, and also that you're not just coming in for the big payoff at the end of your career, because you came in at a time when you were just a few years shy of when normally people retire from Ford. And so, it's there's this huge question of, well, is he
Yeah.
really in it? If he's flying back and forth, is he really going to live here? What's does he see us?
Oh, Laura, absolutely. And oh my gosh, it's so important. It kind of goes back to what you just said, that conversation about the dignity and what we've all learned. And Marilyn Geis is just releasing a new book, and the name of it is The Extraordinary Power of Leader Humility. She's a fabulous leader, and the former director of the Center for Leadership Formation at Seattle University, and manages the MBA program. Just a terrific leader. And her book describes the power of leader humility, meaning to what you just said, is that what everybody wants to know about a leader is, who are they? And to your point, what do they care about? And are they there for themselves? Are they there for the payday? Are they there to maximize the benefit to themselves? Or are they about the company and the company's purpose and where we're going? And then they also want to know is, so where are we going? How are we going to get there? So back to that compelling vision, strategy, and plan. What is our plan? And the most respectful thing you can do with everybody is you respect them so much that you would share with them. You feel responsible to make sure that everybody's pulled together around that vision, that strategy, and plan, and you're sharing all the data with them about how it's going so you can work together to make it happen. Then your third part of that dignity and that leadership humility is, do you see me? Do you see me? I'm here. I'm an employee. I understand who you are now. I understand where we're going. And do you want to include me? And do you respect me to be a part of that team? And so the way that leader acts, those behaviors, you can't fool anybody, right? When you answer those questions, you're only gonna do it if you're doing it with integrity, if you have a plan, if you're respecting them. And so I really think it starts with who you are. And I really think that the way you said it, that who you are as a person and what you care about and about each other and what you care about why you're working and what you're doing and what your role is as a leader is going to have more to do with your leadership effectiveness than anything else.
100%. I learned this lesson the hard way. When I ran my last company, an executive search firm, we used to do annual retreats, and we'd bring people in from all over the world, and we'd sit them down in some beautiful place that we rented out. And I would get up and I would give the State of the Union, and I tell them all about our amazing big plans to come. And they would look at me like I was the teacher in Charlie Brown, like wah 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 wah. And it wasn't until several years later when I had a conversation with somebody who was very high up at GE, a business coach of mine, and he said, Laura, they don't care. The whole plan that you talked about was all about you and where the company's going. And all they were thinking about is there a role for me in that plan? And it wasn't until I realized that I had to talk to them about them and where they fit in and why they were so integral to all of us moving forward together that I figured it out. And the basis of my book, Limitless, around consonance is how I finally figured out how to have conversations with my staff about the things they actually cared about, not the things I actually cared about. Because if I could talk to them, if I could see them and talk to them about what they cared about, then they'd be engaged. And if they're engaged, then they're better for the company. But I really had to sit and listen and really understand and see them. And that was
Absolutely.
anathema to everything I'd ever learned about leadership, which is like the leader is in front and the leader is the one who's talking. Really, the leader is the one in the middle who's listening.
Yeah. Well, and just think the way you said it, that you are now seeing them, and they know now that you really do care about them. And just since you brought up Limitless, and it's one thing for you to talk about how neat it is, but I'd like to say something about that too, is that Consonance is it's just a phenomenal concept, that the way that you have described that, because whether it's connection or whether it's purpose, or the whole idea is what you want in your life and to contribute and with purpose and what you want to do, and control and connection, and then where you are in that, and bringing those two to alignment is what's going to allow you to do the things we're talking about, to be your best self, right? So
Absolutely.
thank you for Limitless.
Oh my goodness. Well, I'm gonna return some of the compliments here. Scott Monty, our friend Scott Monty, writes that I have the best guest ever today, a personal and professional hero of mine, with a little heart emoji. But he does have a question, which I'm going to jump in, and then we're going to move. We'll talk about Wonder Hell a little bit. He says, Alan, we lost Sir Kenneth Robinson last week, who spoke and advised on education. In his famous TED Talk, he said how we're all born with creativity, but through school and work, we run into processes that are designed for conformity rather than creativity. How can we allow leaders to operate with freedom and creativity while still accomplishing their goals?
Well, first of all, hello, Scott Monty. Scott was a
Who you
former.
know is sitting there wearing a bow tie in his home in
Exactly.
Michigan right now,
Well,
watching this.
and he ought to show you a picture of his sons too, that because they started out as, I can remember in they were in kindergarten. They were like mini Monties. Like they looked exactly the same way in their bow ties. He's a terrific contributor, and so really important question. And the way, what I found is this clarity on where we're going as a company, what the plan is for achieving it, and then doing this business plan review where you're actually looking at the facts and data about how it's going is almost liberating, because now you have a red, and it's not a bad thing, it's a gem. That's why I call it a gem. We're going to polish that up, and the fact that we know it, then we're going to be able to get back on plan and achieve our objectives. And so think about, Scott knows this too, think about the creativity that unleashes, and think about the profitable growth for all now. Revenue, profits equal revenue times margin. So one is the revenue side. Are you making products and services that people want and they value and they'll pay you for it? And two, are you improving your quality and your efficiency every year? Well, if everybody is working on both of those and you have a plan for both of those, you're getting all the ingenuity, all the creativity, the whole company is being brought to bear. And what you're saying is that every year we're going to improve that. Well, the only way to do that is to continuously improve, right? So now the only way you can do that is have everybody's creativity to work on both the revenue side and that's why the people that say they're going to restructure the business and they want everybody's help on improving the efficiency, and then their reward is they get laid off. Well, it's not very motivating. And that's why you want to be growing, because now all you're doing now is you're delivering what people want and value with ever increasing efficiency, and everybody gets the benefit, and we're all going to be in this together, and we're all going to get a chance to continue to serve. So I think having a plan, knowing the status of the plan, celebrating it, and including everybody, you're going to get the most creativity on both sides of the business equation, both on the revenue side and on the efficiency.
Yeah, I love this idea of everybody agrees on the goal, but you had this unlimited unlimited creativity in how to get there, and the fact that you created a safe space in which people could brainstorm and come up with ideas, and the red gets polished to a yellow, gets polished to a green quicker when everybody's minds are around the table, and I think that's
Absolutely.
terrific. I one of the things that I thought was fascinating as in the times that I've heard you speak is that you never went in looking to clean house. You just knew that you would present what this is, and the people who didn't want to operate within this environment would self-select out, and I think that's interesting, and I think it really takes knowing who you are and what you're capable of. But I think along the way there are these moments when we surprise ourselves, and this is the sort of wonder hell question.
Right.
You clearly on your paper route delivering the TV guides, remember the TV guides, delivering the TV guides, and bagging up the groceries in the snow for the customers at the grocery store. You weren't dreaming of becoming a CEO. You were like my 18-year-old. You were dreaming of going to space. You were thinking about the stars and the moon. And I think that there are moments along the path where we look around and we're like, wow, I didn't expect to be here. And also, I now realize that I'm made for even more. And there's this moment where you do have to, as humble as you are, and with as much humility as you bring to everything that you do, there have to be moments where you have a little bit of the ego that says you can do it, you can do more, you can take this further. And were there moments along the way where you looked around and you were like, wow, and they're get a load of me back in Kansas. They're not going to believe this is where I got to. I can't believe this is where I got to. And people are paying me to do this thing I dream of. And yet I'm even hungrier for more than I ever thought was possible.
Oh, I I just I think that your blog that you wrote about that, and no, here's your new book. It's right behind Michelle's book. You worked hard on it, and then all of a sudden you went, "Oh my goodness, I really am being asked to serve even more, and am I
Yeah.
ready? Am I ready to do that?" And same journey same journey I have been through, Laura. And I think it's back to this humility thing again. It's not like a weakness or a meekness, or it's back. Think of the opposite of arrogance. I mean, think of the opposite of humility is just use one piece of that as arrogance. And the fact that, do you really know and believe that we know what we know at any point in time, but it's always going to be a small portion of what there is to know. And to your point, when you move up, you're going to know a lot because of just the visibility you have and working with the team and stuff. But your detailed knowledge, everybody is going to become in their function more knowledgeable than you. And so what you're really moving towards is you're not the smartest person in the room now and on your function or anything else. And so if you want to be a leader, and whether it's a small business or medium size, you're moving to the place where you're now a facilitator and a coach. And boy, the humility and the value of the humility to make that happen is unbelievably powerful, because it's not about you now. It's about you facilitating all the people together around that vision, strategy, and plan. Now, on a really practical matter, Laura, I haven't shared this very much, but you have a way of pulling these stories out of me. So there's also there's always a reason to be humble, because there's so much to learn, no matter what you're doing or how much you've been appreciated. And so one story that really was part of my formation was, so I arrive at Boeing. We got multiple degrees in aeronautical, nautical engineering, and business school, MBA, but all I care about is making the best airplanes in the world, because that's what I wanted to serve. And so I want to be the best aeronautical engineer, and I'm checking in with everybody, and I'm doing my assignments, and I go back and get feedback and what I can do to do better. And then one day I get called in, and my manager says, Alan, you're doing great, and we'd like you to be a supervisor. I said, oh, well, what does a supervisor do? And because most of my courses have been engineering. And he said, well, what we'll do is we'll assign you a dynamite engineer like yourself, and then we'd like you to watch over them and nurture them and help them be the best engineer they can be. I can remember thinking, well, obviously I can do that. And so thank you very much. Didn't ask any more questions, Laura. So they assigned me this dynamite engineer from Caltech. And so I'm working in the stability control and flight controls area, and I give him his assignment and stuff. And at that time in engineering, you would do your technical work, and then you have to write it up in a memo, a very sophisticated memo with all your logic and equations of motion and everything. And so I gave him the assignment, and he brought it in, and it was really very good, but I had some suggestions for improvement. And so and at that time we didn't have word processing. So any change that he would make, he'd have to go up to the front of the room, get in a typist up there to redo it in triplicate, in carbon. So it's a big process to make a change. So I give him my suggestions, and he comes back in a day or two, and then I see a few more things that could really make it even more dynamite. 14 revisions later.
Oh my goodness.
14 revisions later, he walks in, he sets his coordination sheet down in front of me and said, Alan, just before you give me your suggestions for improvement, for continuous improvement.
15th time.
Yeah, for the 15th time, I would like to tell you that I'm quitting. I said, you're quitting the company? He says, yes, I just can't take this anymore. I said, why? And he said, well.
And at this point, you think you're doing a great job. You think you're doing a great job.
I'm doing, and it's not an ego thing. I just think I'm doing a great job because everybody's telling me I'm doing a great job.
And the revisions are good, needed revisions.
Absolutely. And so I said, why? He said, well, don't you think that in hindsight that after the second or third one that we probably reached the point of diminishing returns. It was really pretty good then. I said, well, yeah, it was. He said, and so this is micromanaging. We could do a lot more, but you're going to have to trust the process and trust me, and not lead me to be a perfectionist or try to create me in your image. I thought that was a great one too. He was very good. So I said, Mike, that's a really good point. What suggestions would you have for me going forward? He said, well, you might think about, what is Boeing really asking you to do as a supervisor? And maybe they're asking you to make sure that I network with the other engineers. We have thousands of engineers that are working on this, and all of us need to work together to create this fantastic product. So am I networking with the right people to do the best job I can? And maybe do I have the right tools? We just moved from analog to digital. We were the first ones to have HP 32C calculators, a digital computer, and the last people to use slide rules. And he said, maybe just make sure I got the right tools. And I said, well, okay, that's really good. And then maybe, another thing is, maybe keep sharing with me the vision of this airplane and where it's going and what it's going to do, and the why, the value of it. And I said, God, that's really, because I kind of wanted to know that too, even more. And I said, Mike, that's great. And then the last thing he says, oh, and Alan, one thing, I've noticed you starting to copy the behaviors of some of the senior leaders. And this is 45 years ago. And lots of command and control, top down, don't bring me a problem unless you have the answer. You're starting to kind of act that way in this new supervisory role. And he said, it's not you. That's not who you are. You are a really neat person that cares. And so I would also recommend to you that you're going to be even more effective if you be you, and without saying it, and love us up and appreciate us and thank you, and be intentional about that. Well, Laura, you can imagine. This was so compelling to me that I said, Mike, this is great. I want to follow all those suggestions you're making. And so if I do, will you stay? Remember, this is my first employee.
Yeah.
And he said,
your first
no.
employee was the most emotionally mature engineer that's ever been graduated from Caltech or any other school. It's amazing. You got so lucky.
Exactly. So he said, no way. I'm sure you're going to be great, but I've got to get out of this micromanagement. So
he was so honest with you because he thought he was on the way out the door. He just had nothing to lose. It was amazing.
He said, I like this. I said, can we stay in touch? And he said, absolutely. And I stayed in touch with him over the years, and he did really well, of course. And he even thought about coming back a couple of times, because I used to love to try to get him back. And we remained good friends. And he was so proud of what I did and how I did it. And to your point, how fortunate over the thousands of employees, hundreds of thousands of employees over the years that I've had a chance to serve, that my first one that I learned that it's going to be humility, love, and service, and never be arrogance. And I had a chance to learn that with the first employee. And so you can imagine, combine my formation and some events along the way, that way, that there is no way for me to ever walk away from humility, love, and service.
Absolutely. I know that I said we'd have an hour, but maybe there'd be a little more. Do you have a few more minutes?
Oh, sure.
Oh, you're amazing. So, when I explained the concept of wonder held to you, this idea that you are seeing you're accomplishing more than you ever thought possible, and yet it's so stressful and so exhausting. You said, I never saw it that way. For me, it was always energizing. You never saw the hell in wonder hell. You saw the wonder, and that wonder was the thing that kept compelling you to move forward and to do more. Talk to us a little bit about
Oh, sure.
And if there are any stories about like the parts that energized you, where you really uh, maybe it's a momentum, maybe it's just the boy who dreamed of the stars, just seeing more of the galaxy in front of him. I'd love to hear
Sure.
about how these crucible, these Rubicon moments actually energized you to even dig even deeper and become more of who you are.
Well, again, I'll just also refer back to your blog too about this, about what you went through and are going through personally. And when you saw the response to your work and the book, and you're going, whoa, that's
Yeah.
great. But is that, I mean, I think I'm also getting feedback that there's more that I could do to serve. And obviously you're, you're coming from the same place in your heart. And so it's, you can't walk away from that. I mean, it's a gift. You've developed this way, you're at that place. And so now you can see that others want you to serve even more. Well, and that can be not only the wonder part about that was great to be next to Michelle, but that, oh my gosh, I mean, what am I going to do about this? And
The
so
burden, right? The
the
burden of
burden, yeah,
potential that you feel that is very
exactly.
heavy.
So what happened to me, what always happened to me, and it still happens to me, um, with every child, with every job, with every promotion, with every opportunity to serve in a bigger way, what what I always went through was, whoa, uh, meaning dealing with reality. Why am I being appreciated? Why are they treating me this way? Why are they like me here? And so, and I would not just talk about that, think about that myself, but I would ask. I always wanted to know. Nikki and I've been married for 50 years, and that's the first person I always ask. And um, and when you ask, people will tell you, and also look in their eyes. Why do they want you around, or why do they want to get away from you? And so every time I've been asked to serve more, I was terrified. And it's back to this humble part. When you look at service and increasing your service and people want you to do more, you really don't know what those look like. What's it going to really be like? Are you going to use the same skills you had today? Well, and what do we just talked about? As you take on more and more responsibility and service, you're going to develop another set of skills. You're going to move from being a specialist to being more of a generalist, to being more of a facilitator and a coach, and creating and nurturing this kind of environment that we're all want to operate in. And so then it went back to the humility part again. So what was, even though I was scared to death, the hell part, you could say, I was like, oh gosh, uh, one was I was always trying to understand really what the reality was, what the situation was. I wasn't fooling anybody. I was being my authentic self. And no, I mean, I think I understand what they're thinking. But then the second part is I wanted to network with them even more. So
Mm.
the more people asked me to do, the more I started tapping into all the stakeholders to understand what it meant, what the job was. And remember back to my first employee, where obviously I thought I knew what being a supervisor was. I had no idea. So every job I've had, I go back, lifelong learning, take some more courses, check in with people all around me, that my colleagues, the people that are looking to me for leadership, both that will report to me or the people I report to, always doing a continuing 360. And also, what can I do? What can I do to continuously improve my performance and my contribution? And I really think um, that enables you to tap into all the resources in your life in a positive way. And everybody knows, and you can't be not authentic. I mean, you just can't. You just have to be your real self.
I would think that the idealist, the optimist in you, which is comes through so strong, is constantly at war with the person inside that's like, well, you saved Boeing. If you don't save Ford now, you're going to be the guy who killed Ford as opposed to the guy who saved Boeing, right? Like you could have just ridden out into the sunset on that and been perfectly fine. Has there ever been a challenge you backed down from that you're like, no, I can't do it. This isn't for me. I'm not the right person.
Wow. Um, I was I was just thinking when you described just Boeing and then Ford, and uh, here I am at Boeing. I love Boeing. I've been there for 37 years. Had the honor to serve on every Boeing airplane and help integrate the defense and space assets of the United States for the help create one of the most significant aerospace companies in the world. And never thought I'd leave. And um, I was the CEO of commercial airplanes, which was the largest part of the business. And I get this call from Bill Ford, and I'm thinking, Bill Ford? I mean, the great grandson of Henry Ford, and he's calling me. And um, and I knew I was in trouble, Laura, because I didn't say no right away. And he was describing. I wanted to know.
You left the door open just
I know,
enough.
I know. Like he and I wanted to know all about it. And I grew up in a small town in Kansas, and we had a Ford dealership and that big, beautiful blue oval, and when we learned to drive, and my siblings and I would, wreck the cars every once in a while, and we'd take it to the dealership, and a lot of times they'd fix it and not even tell our parents. And so there's something special about the blue oval. And so the more I learned about it, the worse it got. It was like, holy cow! They had bought Aston Martin, Jaguar, Land Rover, Volvo, Mazda. No one knew what the Ford Blue Oval stood for. They weren't competitive. They were losing money on every brand, on every car. They had become a follower instead of a leader in technology, and they were all regionalized, so there's no working together, and so they had no scale to compete against the best global companies in the world. And so, to your point, everybody always says, "Why would you leave? Why would you leave Boeing and go to a very high risk what people would think was a very, very high risk situation?" And I even had people say to me, "Alan, I know this working together thing seems to work, but even you can't save Ford. And why would you go?" And I said, "That's why I'm going. This is a Ford Motor Company, and between Boeing and Ford, this is the arsenal of democracy. This is why we're free as a country. These two companies committed themselves to help save the United States, and I'm being asked to serve, and I think I can help." And so, to your point, I really think the answer to that question is to serve is to live. It really is. And when people ask me about that, I say, just stay open and be aware. Marshall Goldsmith loves to say, just be aware, everything's going on. You're going to have lots of opportunities. There's lots of room to improve around our world. And so be open to it, be your humble self, but you're going to be asked. And so you need to be ready to decide where you want to serve going forward. And so I think that's why I've ended up where I've been.
Let me ask you one last question that we have from somebody who's watching, from Jennifer McCullum. Says, "Hi, Alan. I love your inclusion." Yes, from our MG100. "I love your inclusion for all practice via BPR, and I wonder how or if you apply it to those populations who have traditionally less included, women, race, other forms of underrepresentation." And she wants to know, did you focus on it intentionally in your career, or did it just happen naturally?
Well, first of all, hi, Jennifer. Jennifer is a fabulous leader, and she's committed her life to leadership formation and development, and she's a terrific leader. So Jennifer, I think as part of the way I grew up, and I had 3 sisters. We didn't have a lot of racial diversity in a small town in Kansas, but we had representations for all. And I think also the University of Kansas just changed my life because I grew up in Lawrence, and KU is very international. And so there are lots of students from around the world. And my mom and dad always, my mom was connected with the university. And so, and they always wanted to help the students. And when they couldn't go home to India or Asia or wherever, then she'd invite them over for Thanksgiving and dinner. And so we all sat there and saw all this, the diversity with a big D, like, holy cow. And their lives, and they cared, and they were far away from home, and they wanted to make a difference. And so I thought that's the way the whole world was. And so, and it was almost like any other difference was like a blessing. It was like an asset. And the conversations were always richer. They were always more thoughtful. We came to better answers. And you can see why I really think that had a big part of me joining Boeing and Ford, because they're global companies. We operate all around the world. It's all about inclusion of everybody. In the biggest sense of the word, on that's why we say it's like the capital D. It's like including everybody. And so I think that's why I've always operated that way, because one, I loved it. I was so fascinated by others and any other thoughts or ways of thinking about things, but also the power of inclusion of of that diversity with a big D. I mean, the innovation, that they looking at things from multiple different ways and stuff is just, I think it's just an absolute key to working together.
Yeah, I was struck by,
and I've loved it. I just always have loved meeting all the different people.
I was struck at the very beginning of our conversation. You talked about how you wanted to go build airplanes so people could travel around the world and see each other and meet each other and get to know each other and realize that we have more that unites us than divides us. And I thought that's such a great way. So last question for me. What are you most excited about now? What's next for you?
Well, one thing is one of our 5 children just had twin boys, which they all have red hair. I mean, both of them have red hair. It just makes me cry. And so our family, we've always stayed really close, and it just gets better and better. And I love being part of it and serving. As you mentioned, I really have enjoyed serving at Alphabet and Google and figuring out. I mean, Larry and Sergey's original vision of organizing all the world's information and making it available and useful to all of us. Now Sundar, as a leader, believes that so strongly, and what that's going to do, and that we have to do it in the right way. We got big issues about it, but to be able to be part of figuring that out has been great. The Mayo Clinic, Laura, is complex and serious care. I've never seen anything like it. All the doctors actually lead the place, and the 3 shields of their research, and they do their own education of the physicians, and then the practice itself is the best in the world. Has been great. Carbon 3D is going to change the world with digital product definition and making parts all around the world. And Blue Current is going to figure out how to do solid state electrodes and change the whole world for battery storage, which changed the world for all of us. And just being, and I'm helping more in the community and helping everybody make sure we all vote and take care of our democracy. And all we got to do is rally behind our Constitution. I mean, it was all there out of many one, really. I mean, this is an experiment that is at a really important time, democracy and capitalism. And I love being part of the business roundtable and moving towards not just shareholder value as a purpose of business, but all the stakeholders are valuing, like we talked about PGA.
Profitable growth for all.
Profitable growth for all of us, for all of us.
That's right.
We got to get rid of this haves and have-nots and pull us all together. So And then, answering the call when you call and consulting a little bit because everybody wants to know about working together. And I just feel very blessed to be able to continue to serve.
So this is normally the time when I ask a guest, where can people find you and what kind of book do you want people to buy and all of that stuff. And you're just like, go out and serve and love and do. Go vote.
Well,
Maybe that's the thing.
and there's so much room to do that. And I guess back to Marshall and just being open to it and being your humble self and leading with love and service. Now on books, I'd say Jennifer has a great book. You have a good book on Limitless, and Marilyn is coming out with The Extraordinary Power of Leader Humility. And there's so many great thought leaders out there. So, but them all too. So, and also one last thing, Laura, thanks for the opportunity. I love your leadership. I love what you're doing, and I love being included. And I'm glad that you asked me to help.
Well, you are, I will say, one of the most dear individuals I have met in the last year, and humility is your middle name. I am so honored to be part of the MG 100 with you. I'm so pleased to have gotten to know you. When I first talked to Scott Monty about you, when I was interviewing him for Limitless, and he told me all about you, I was like, this guy can't. He's too good to be true. Fine, you're just drinking from the, from the cult wine that he's serving, but. Turns out he was right. You're pretty terrific. Thank you so much for joining me today. Thank you for being willing to jump on this conversation live, not really knowing exactly where we were going to go with it. And I think it is a representation of all you are and all you do. So I appreciate you. Thank you so much.
Nice job, and thank you so